A warm welcome to everyone listening or watching for today's Limerick Senior Football Championship preview special with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt Callan, a Weekly Observer, and Vale Star. We are currently less than 3 weeks out from Championship, but I'm on my holidays, as you know. So we're getting our preview in early. It's a very exciting time. Championship is kicking off the same weekend as Limerick have their senior All-Ireland semi-final, but we don't know who that is, so we won't dwell on that. As usual, it's 12 teams, but first and foremost, Matt, we're back to our original format. Every team gets 5 games, top team into semi-final, second and third into a quarter-final, fourth and fifth, season over, and sixth play relegation final against sixth in the other group. So, we've heard you at length talk about how well you think the competition is run. So it's brilliant that Limerick GA have been afforded the time with a split season, which we discussed in our most recent podcast, that we're going to see everyone play everyone, essentially.
Yeah, I'm particularly happy, Jack. I wasn't a fan of the truncated thing, but it was designed for the circumstances in which we found ourselves, unfortunately, in with the pandemic. But it was very restricted for clubs. Like you were in groups of 3, with two clubs going out, but the club that lost the first day out was in serious trouble, Jack, invariably, And this is much better now. And I'm thinking in particular, like in 2020, Geltie Gales coming up. And it will apply to Kildimo Palace Kenry this year. You certainly have a much better chance, Jack, if you're promoted from intermediate, to consolidate it over a 5-game series rather than a 2-game series.
Yeah.
And I think that really stands to reason. And I'm a big fan of the system. I'm a big fan of the format, and I'll make no apologies to anybody for it. I have heard very little adverse comment over the years that this system has been in place. I've heard little or no adverse comment saying that the format is this, that, or the other thing, other than a good format.
Yeah.
Now, people on the foot of this will probably be ringing in and saying, "What are you talking about?" But I'm taking a preemptive strike here, and I'm saying to anybody that's minded to do that, tell us a better system. Give us a better system.
Yeah, sure. You're always going to have haters, for want of a better word, but I don't. It's a brilliant competition, and it works brilliantly. I suppose we'll be looking today solely at the senior championship. That's not to say the other championships are important, but today we'll be solely on the senior championship and just looking through the groups. The draw was made a couple of months back. You have Group 1, Clahan, Father Casey's, Galbally, Monaleen, Newcastle West, and Ula. And then in Group 2, you have Adair, Ballysteen, Ballylanders, Geltie Gales, Kildimo Palace Kenry, and St. Kieran's. We're going to look through the 2 groups, Matt, in full. We'll probably start with Group 1, work into Group 2. We'll look at the first round fixtures. I give an overall brief of how we see the championship playing out, which invariably will go the other way, and then we'll come back to our predictions. You kind of wiped the floor with me the predictions last year. I was getting very busy at the time. It was kind of kept in, but you were streets ahead. There was no denying. We might look at having a prize or something this year, or something to keep more interesting. But maybe general overviews of the 2 groups. I think they're both quite competitive. You obviously have the finalists were split, but it's hard to say which would be a favourable group. I think I could be. I don't know.
Actually, you're right there, Jack. In that the groups are very even, and like normally when you look at groups, it invariably strikes you in this type of a situation. It invariably strikes you. Oh God, that group is the tough group, But that cannot be said about this. It looks as if they're pretty even, and I suppose some of that goes back in a way, Jack, to the system of drawing it, where the top 4 are seeded, and it ensures the 2 can go into each group. Yeah. So that goes. I think that's a very fair system, and I think it goes some way towards explaining why we have what can be perceived, Jack, as two very, very even groups. And I'm just looking at here on my screen on the left here, and you know, there could be compelling cases made, and I know you're going to come to it towards the finish. When we would be stargazing or crystal ball gazing into seeing what three might be likely to come through, and like it's one of those years that compelling case can be made nearly for all clubs. But I suppose a note of interest, Jack, and starting at the bottom maybe first, you know, there will be more than a little interest in Kildimo Palace Kennery this year. It's their first time ever up, and plus the fact that you know, they're one of two dual clubs that we have now in the senior championship. That's if you say, you know, you have Adair in both and you've Kildimo Palace Kennery, all right, and Agwood can be made it. Doon and Ula are also in, you know, both playing senior. But it'll be very interesting to see how Kildimo Palace Kennery will adapt. And I'm of the opinion, from seeing that the way they won the intermediate championship last year, I think they will go into it with a certain element of confidence and well-placed confidence, Jack. And maybe this wasn't your intention now that we'd start talking about Kildimo Palace Kennery at this point. But just making the point. Now, the key to it, you know, and talking to John Chalk, and you were with me when we were talking to him last year, when we put that very point to him, he's the manager of the football team, about how they married the commitments to hurling and football. And like, by all accounts, they did it very, very successfully. But this is going to be a different challenge for them, because now there is a bit of a crossover of players. Not a lot, though. There are quite a few that just play football only, and quite a few that play hurling only. But there probably is a greater crossover than there is in Adair. So yeah, I think that will be one of the challenges for Kildimo Palace Kennery. Like, because of the return of the old format, let's say, of the tried and trusted format, both in hurling and football, it means now that Kildimo Palace Kennery are facing 10 big games.
Yeah, that's the thing for Kildimo Palace, is like they wouldn't have a huge population between the two clubs, and there is a large turnover. I'd say there's probably 7 or 8 that will be starting on both teams, which is half your team are out, going to be out 10 weeks in a row. I think for KP that's going to be the big thing. But if they can if they can hit the ground running, you know, there'll be a way to something there. But like we'll run through the teams quickly enough. Like, that's KP, St. Kieran's, then who they have in the first round. We will look at the first round fixtures too. St. Kieran's the last 2 years have been relegation trouble, but that's not where they belong, and they've had to do with injuries. And we know Sean McSweeney for the last 2 years, and I know Noel Callan was injured last year as well. Like, you know, they're a really, really strong team. They just, before recording here, they beat Galway yesterday. They're into the league final. They're into the West final against Newcastle. We played them we being Ballysteen, played them in the West League semi-final. You know, St. Kieran's are a very hard team to play against. That's always the case, but they have good like, they're so adept at holding onto the ball. Really like Drum Broadford in their prime. If you lose the ball against St. Kieran's, you are not getting it back easily, and that's so hard to play against. And they're a very effective team.
They're a very effective team. They've never been relegated. You know, they have diced with it, but they have never actually suffered relegation. That's my understanding, that they hold that record exclusively, I think. And they've been going very. They're sort of yo-yo in many ways, Jack. They're after being involved in relegation scraps for the last 2 years, and you must remember the previous year they went so close to making the county final when they were defeated by Ula in the semi-final, inside the Gaelic grounds and the lights. You know, so you know, it depends on what St. Kieran's will turn up, and like they've had a great season and so far. And they're into the county league final, where they will play Newcastle West. And all that has been achieved without Derek Tracy, who would be their key man probably. But you know, they shouldn't get carried away, Jack, by league form and league performances.
No.
All they should do in that regard is ask Liam Cahill and Waterford. And we saw how they performed in the league, and where are they now that the championship is at the meaty end of the the business end of the competition. So I'm not reading a terrible lot into league form. It gives an indication, and I suppose the reason it gives an indication is that I think the leagues are well structured, the way that they're being run at the moment, and they practically dovetail into the championship. So certainly in the concluding stages of the league, clubs have to be coming up to championship tempo. Now I saw the South final there a couple of weeks ago between Ula and Galway, and now both sides were short the number of players. Now Ula was short more than Galway, but there was more than a little championship tempo and championship intensity about it. You know, it was heading in that direction, let's say. And I suppose you had a situation where both teams were short a few, but you had guys out in the field really undergoing an audition for places for the championship in the respective teams. So if the real St. Kieran's turn up, Jack, they're going to be challengers.
Yeah, they will.
We've seen that in the past. Tough customers to get over, and and they have that game coming up against Newcastle West, which will stand them in very good stead. And like St. Kieran's don't fear Newcastle West. We've seen that in the past, you know. So that will be it'll be very interesting. It'll be a very, very interesting county league final now. On Monday evening, before we recorded this, Newcastle West had beaten Monaleen, which was a repeat of last year's league final, and it'll be a very, very interesting final. I think St. Kieran's could be poised for a decent year, Jack.
Yeah, I'll get your prediction to see who gets out of the groups in a bit, but. Kieran's are another that'll have to juggle with the hurling. They obviously reached the Junior A final last year, so there is good hurling there. Geltie Gales last year in their second year played very well. They already have a winning record over St. Kieran's and Ballysteen from last year, so that'll bode well for them. And they reached the semi-final where they were beaten by Adair. Now, Tommy Childs hasn't played for Limerick this year. I don't know if he's playing for Geltie Gales. He would be a massive loss if he's gone for them. But they do have a very good side. You know, Morris Sullivan would be in with the county only for injuries curtailing his season. He'll probably be back for them. They have a lot of nice footballers coming through. They're a dangerous outfit, is how I describe Geltie Gales.
Well, I wouldn't describe him as a dangerous outfit. I describe him as a very good football team.
There could be opposition.
There could be desperate connotations to a dangerous outfit, Jack. But no, seriously, I have great time for the Gales, as you know. I'm very close to them here. Tommy Childs is playing. Morris O'Sullivan, my information is that he'll be in a race against time to play any part in the County Senior Football Championship this year, which is a huge blow to him. Now, John McGrath has stepped down as their manager. Yeah. He guided them to both County Junior A and County Intermediate success, and to the County Senior Football semi-final. And don't forget, led them and guided them to that dramatic game down against Drummond Pierces when they nearly caused a shock of the Munster Club Championship back about 4 years ago now. Dan McCarthy has come in as manager. Dan was the club secretary, a very, very capable man, and certainly it's transitioned from John to Dan, but it will be seamless. And they love their football so much up there I think that they're poised for a good year again. They're going to be difficult to beat. They didn't root up any trees in the league, but they will probably be timing for the first round of the championship. Which is it against Adair?
Yeah, they're out. They're out first round of Adair. I'll just
Which
throw
is
up
a
the
repeat of
first.
last year's semi-final.
Yeah, Adair, Geltie Gales,
So
Palestine, Highlanders, which is obviously the main event for the whole championship, not to mind the first round.
it
Tongue in
is.
cheek. It's St. Kieran's versus
I'll,
Glen
I'll,
Presbyterian.
I'll let you preview that, Jack, and I'll sit in silence, in
Yeah,
dignified silence while you're previewing it.
we'll get to that game. Obviously, Geltie Gales are playing Adair, as you rightly said. Adair were finalists last year, champions in 2020, champions in 18 and 17 as well. A bit like the Limerick team, just kind of all of a shot were the main players in the championship. They're second favourites to win the championship again, and they're favourites to win this group. I think that's fair to say that Adair will look at this group and think we are the best team in this group. That 5 wins is definitely a real possibility. And I'm not sure their record, but Adair's record in the last, I suppose, 3 or 4 years in the group stages, bar that lost to Father Casey's last year, I think they've won nearly every game out of the last 15 or so, which is an impeccable record. And they just know how to get the job done. Now, they're a beautiful football team, in fairness to them. They play real nice stuff. But when they need to grind it out, they can do it. They can do it either way, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they can. And, you just wonder how they're going to begin life without the guidance of Harry Gleeson, their manager, who has moved on after a hugely successful period. There's a bit of backroom transition going on there. So how that will impact on the team's performance on the field, I don't know. I suspect very, very little. They have an advantage. And we were talking about dual clubs, Jack, and talking about it in the context of Kildimo, Palace, Kinry, in that their crossover of players is basically minimal.
Yeah,
there are very few apart from the Conleys and the Lineses. I think there is very, very, there may be one or two others, but it is very, very little, and of course they have the experience now over the last number of years of managing that situation, which will give them an advantage. Yeah, look, Adair, they lost the county final, Jack, last year, but Adair are gone nowhere.
No, they're not.
I know they will be very, very much in this in the shake-up, and no, that there are too many good footballers. There's a point that's always been missed about it there, and I've great time for the way they play football. They seem to have been around for an age, because they've won 3 county seniors, they've won a county intermediate, they've won two Premier under 21A titles. But Jack, they're still a young team.
Yeah, they are. They're kind of spearheaded by
the note base of that team is only in its mid-20s.
Yeah,
so it's phenomenal.
A lot of them have inter-county experience as well. Obviously, the Burks and the Paul Mahers of this world, and the Connellys. So they're a formidable outfit to be a match for anyone. We'll move on to Palestine. We'll finish with our own Highlanders when we get to Group 2 for ourselves.
I thought we should, Jack. I from the list I see here, this is the game that we should have done second. You're jumping all over the. You're jumping all over the place.
You were the one that jumped into KP, who would have been second from last on my list, because I was going to Group 1. But yeah, Palestine, obviously last year, against Adair in the quarter-final, pushed them all the way. We're without Neville, who's still abroad, so that's a big loss. But there's always good footballers in Palestine. I don't talk too much about my own team. I won't obviously be playing, but I'll let you get to it now in a second. But I know you have good time for Palestine behind it all. Always been good footballers. It'll be key to get a good start against Highlanders. Obviously, in 19, there was a big win against Highlanders start of the year, and that gave us good momentum going forward. But, we're not picking from a huge population, and most teams aren't, to be fair. But you'll be hopeful that you get a good start and see where it takes us your opinions on Palestine?
And my opinion in Palestine has been very consistent in that over the last couple of years, I don't think that very often they didn't get the results that their football deserved, because I think they're a very decent football team, and actually I like watching them as a football team, and I'm saying that now in all honesty, Jack. Joking as aside, now at this point, it's parked. But basically what I'm saying is that are Palestine slightly underachievers?
You could point to that now.
In that their football, as I said, their football very, very often, Jack, warrants a better return in terms of victories and in terms of points in league standings and what have you.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Difficult customers to beat now. Danny Neville, of course, is a huge loss. Danny is a huge loss to Limerick. Danny Neville is a loss to any team. Let's face it, at any level. Will he not be back for the championship, Jack, or for any of it for the summer?
I don't know. He might be back for a game or two, but will he play or not is another thing.
He's
been abroad for a while. Yeah, we'll keep secrets here, but no, look, it'll be up to him. He's obviously, work has to come first, and if he's abroad, he won't be playing. But look, his absence is a huge loss. But I think since he left, Darragh Rennan has really stepped up to the play. He's obviously been in with Limerick this year. There's a couple of lads in the 20s team, so there is good players coming through, but you can't account for the loss of someone like Danny to a club like Palestine. But I'll wait now and see. Do you think Palestine will get out of the group in just a while? But we'll go on to your own Ballylanders, who I suppose we're looking back to bounce back from last year, which was underwhelming, I suppose, to say the least. But again, in a truncated season, as you said, if you lose your first game, they were obviously playing Claghon, who had that bounce, and things conspired. But I remember talking to you after the relegation semi-final, and that was obviously their best performance of the year. And when Ballylanders are on form, they are, I'm going to say dangerous again, and I mean that in the best way possible, that when we lost Ballylanders in 18, they beat Newcastle the following week, who would have been heavy favorites.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what I meant by dangerous.
A low-scoring game in Neville, yeah, they did. Jack, if Fitzgerald is back at the helm for Ballylanders this year, which is a big boost. Like if he has been around Ballylanders now on and off for the most of a decade. He guided them to county success in 2014. He had a few years away with Cork ladies football, but he's back. He's back this year in charge. Now they didn't do that well in the league championship in the south. I saw him against Galway, and they were only beaten after extra time, mind you. But if he was there on the night, if he hasn't had a chance to work with him because of his commitment to the Waterford Senior Football team, but now he will be giving them his undivided attention. And Bally have tried a lot of young players during the course of the last few seasons, and we'd say the likes of Paholian, who was full back for Limerick under 20s, and Pat Shanahan, who was on Limerick under 20s last year. You have Shane O'Donoghue, who has been with Limerick under 20s for the last couple of years. Sean Maloney, Killian Mead. You're young players, but they're going to go into this championship, those players now, with 2 or 3 years of senior football under their belts, which will be a big asset to them. And you still have the likes of Stephen Fox, you have the likes of Jimmy Barry, and now Danny Froon is injured at present. But hopefully from a Ballylanders point of view, he will be back for the championship. And you have the like of Declan O'Connor, and they have a nice blend of youth and experience, and they're quite capable of making life difficult for anybody. And I think, as in the past, Jack, there will be an Efi factor, you know.
Yeah, they're
And
always a difficult
and
team to play against.
yeah,
To be fair to
I,
Highlanders, we've had
I would be hoping, that will click in, particularly against Palestine, Jack, because I couldn't countenance be listening to you for the rest of the year,
Yeah, well, we'll
But
get to, we'll look at the fixture in a minute, but I mean, you won in 18, Palestine won in 19, and you won in the semi-final in 20, so we missed out last year. We'll take it this year to start up the championship. But moving on to Group 1, then just get teams up again. Clahan, Father Casey's, Galway, Monaghan, Newcastle West. We're in a league final and champions already, and Ula. We'll start with Clahan. They were in their first year back up last year, Matt. They reached the quarterfinals. They lost Newcastle, who were defending champions. We saw Geltie Gales went from, consolidating their place to go into a semi-final, and they came from a relegation final to a semi-final. Clahan have already reached the knockout stages, so, for the city side, they would certainly be looking at upward at let's get out of this group, but they will have a tall task to get out of that group.
They will. They'll have a tall task to get out of it, but they will give it a damn good try, Jack, because I saw him a couple of times last year, and I was impressed with him, and I saw him in that victory over Ballylanders. I also saw him in the quarter-final defeat to Newcastle West, which was played, Jack, in the most inclement weather I think I ever experienced in Neville Park. And like, the thing about Clahan is Clahan are playing senior football, Jack, and it's their rightful place to be playing senior football, because they've had a great tradition, and they've made a huge contribution to Limerick football over the years and to Limerick county teams, and it's good to see them back. And I think they will benefit considerably from their first year in last year, even though truncated and all as it was. But looking at the group, it's going to be very, very difficult, and I know we'll come down to trying to figure out who will come out of the groups later. But Clahan will be a pushover for nobody, Jack. There'll be nobody's whipping boys, the club has faced adversity there with lack of numbers and all that sort of thing, and a decline in its fortunes over the last few years. And the returning to senior football has been a really bright spot for them, And look, I would expect them to make life difficult for everybody,
Yeah, up next in that, well, I suppose Clahan have their first round game against Father Casey's, and they're next in my alphabetical order. For me, Father Casey's are perennial underachievers when you see the minor teams they produce, and it doesn't even translate to 21 success. But like, if they can get their house in order and those players live up to their potential, they're county champions in waiting. Now they've shown nothing not nothing, but they haven't built on that. But like, all it takes is 1 year for it to work out in their favor, and it could be this year.
Could be, Jack. I have been expressing that sentiment and writing that sentiment for a number of years now. And something, Jack, some year I might be right, and you might be right. But like, if underage success was the criterion for eventual senior success, like, Father Casey's should be, clear, sweeping all before him, but it just isn't happening, and they're in groups, and they're struggling. They're even struggling to get out of groups, and there are a good few landmines there now in that group for Father Casey's. Is it Father Casey's at Clahan in the first round, or Father Casey's and Ula, Jack?
I'll just double check here now. Oh, sorry, you are right. It is Father Casey's and Ula. I was right. I was wrong there. It is Father Casey's and Ula. I'll have to change that.
Yeah.
But anyways,
we'll get back to Clahan's opponents in a minute, Galway anyway. But and Father Casey's, they got to the Junior A final last year, which would tell you that there's a whole reservoir of talent there. But for some reason they don't be able to. They're unable to make the step up. They remind me to a certain degree of Galway hurling, where Galway hurling are monotonously winning All Ireland minor championships, and yet they've just won All Ireland 2017 for the last 20 years.
Yeah, but they got there 2017. Father Casey's are waiting for their moment in the sun.
Just before I finish in Galway, you would say that winning minor championships and winning 4 in a row minor championships, that it was a license to win under 20s. They haven't won an under 2021 since 2011. So whatever melody that is in Galway in that regard, it compares favorably with Rathkeil. That it just can't. They don't seem to be. No, I know they have been dogged with losing players and all that sort of thing, but every club has to a certain degree.
As we said, it only takes 1 year for it to work out. As you rightly pointed out, they've Ula first. Ula were county finalists in 19, but were well beaten by Geltie Gales last year in the quarter-final. For Cam Downey and his side, they're juggling 2 senior teams as well. It's, again, small enough player pool. They've probably 3 or 4 maybe of a turnover, but I always kind of associate Ula with kind of fast, exciting kind of football. They obviously have Josh Ryan, which is a huge target man, can play in or inside the full forward line or out the field. I think
they're both 2 powerful players now.
Yeah, I think for me a lot will ride on that first game with Father Casey's, as it will for all games, but that particularly.
Owen Fitzgibbon is a fabulous player. He's a long-serving player, and you've guys like that. Now I've seen Ula play, but they were beaten by Galway in the South final. Now Kim Downey was telling me that they were short a lot of players, and they were short an awful lot of players that night, including Josh, who was on the sideline because of his commitments with Limerick, obviously. But Galway, I thought. Galway, I thought beat him comfortably enough now, but it was a very, very good competitive game now and a competitive final, and it was the South Senior Football final, and that'll be one of the harder ones to call, Jack. When you and I will be calling for points and see who got the most right.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I would say, who wins that game is in the driving seat to come out of the group. And I think that's what a lot of these first round games are, that you can build up a bit of steam. And I think similarly for Galway against Clahan, I know it's Galway a minute ago, but Galway were semi-finalists in 20, and then they were, because they were in the relegation semi-final last year, because they were paired with Casey's and Newcastle. So this year they'll have time to build. You saw them in the South final. They're obviously South champions. They lost to St. Kieran's, but they do seem to be building nicely a double for themselves and Gary Spillane. And, they'll be looking at Clahan and saying we have to get off on the right foot here and avoid something like 2020 or 2021. Yeah,
and I'm not an apologist for their defeat to St. Kieran's on Saturday evening, but a lot of their players were involved in a very, very highly contested South hurling final 48 hours earlier. In fairness to them, a lot of the players with Gary Spillane. To me, I've seen them, and I'm finding it very, very hard to pigeonhole where exactly they belong in the grand scheme of things. There are a lot of pluses. There are a lot of minuses. They have a lot. It's a new look Galway team in many ways. A new look Galway team, and one thing you're always assured from Galway is that you'll be assured of a challenge. Now, Galway and Gary Spillane have been without the services of Matt Quinlan all this year, who's a huge player for both of them. Make no mistake about it. Now, I understand that Mark should be back in time for the championship, which will be. I understand that he will be resuming his Limerick duties possibly within 3 weeks. So, which would be great news for everybody. So that would be a very, very big plus. Again, it would be one of those ones where I wouldn't be reading too much into their league form, and I wouldn't be reading too much into their league defeat by St. Kieran's for the reason what I said. Now, I was at the Garris Glanbrook game on Thursday evening, and like it was a game that was fought to the bitter end, Jack. They weren't sure of it until Jack Riley got a goal, maybe 5 or 6 minutes from the end. And they eventually won it by 2 goals. But, you know, a lot of those fellas were out, the likes of the Dylan O'Shea's, the Brian Heavies, the Eoin Sheehans. You know, they all put in huge shifts in that game. So, you know, Ryan Tobin, the jury would be out, and obviously we'll see how things will pan out in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But whether they'll come out of the group is a big question. At this remove, you would have to say that they'd probably be favourites not to come out of the group. But a lot could change.
Yeah, we'll move on to the last 2 teams quickly, and it's probably the standout game of the first round. Monaleen versus Newcastle. As you said, Newcastle beat Monaleen the night we were recording this, and Monaleen beat Newcastle last year in the league final. They played out, was it 11 points to 10 in last year's semi-final? They have a lot of history. We'll start with Monaleen first. Like Far Cases, they've been building underage the last 2 years. They had a very good kind of spell with the minors 5 or 6 years ago. Those players are kind of coming to the fore now. They obviously have Brian Donovan and Donald Sullivan, which is kind of invaluable to have a player in goals and then in the forwards, you know. So probably second favourites in the group, but arguably second favourites in the whole competition.
Yeah, I would agree with that analysis, Jack. I certainly would. I saw that league final with him last year. I actually didn't see the semi-final now of the championship. It clashed with another game that night.
The hurling,
it clashed with the hurling, which we were, you know, covering. Which, by the way, I hope doesn't happen this year again.
Yeah,
I hope we had the two hurling. Was it the quarterfinals?
It was the quarters.
2 hurling quarterfinals and 2 football semi-finals on in the one day. Like, please, let's not have that again this year. But yeah, anytime I've seen Monaleen in recent years, and you're right, they're blooding in an awful lot of young players and bringing them through successfully. And you have the likes of Donald O'Sullivan and Brian Donovan there to lead the way. Yeah, they're going to be contenders, and I would be desperate surprised. And even before we come now to saying who will and who won't come out of the group, I'd be desperate surprised if Monaleen do not contest at least the quarterfinal.
Yeah, we'll be looking more at the knockout stage as we get on. So, like,
but I have to say, like that Monaleen as a club is for the most part upwardly mobile. It's not too long ago since they won the Junior A football championship, which would give you an idea. Now, a little fly in the ointment may be the fact that they were relegated from the senior hurling championship last year, but you know, it's for another day. But I think they'll be very, very strong contenders in the Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship.
Yeah, I suppose we'll be looking forward to the championships as well. But Newcastle West then are favourites with the bookmakers. They're my favourites as well. They're the defending champions.
Yeah, they're my favourites, Jack. They're my favourites for success. Now, you know, they haven't a great record of defending their title. But having said that, like over the last number of years, Jack, if and I'm talking about over the last decade, you know, were you to sit down, like do something like we are doing here, and were you to compare the panel of players that's going to be available to the various teams and their respective panels, like the Newcastle West panel, Jack, is so strong. It is so strong. Like there are players in the Newcastle West squad, and they're on the Newcastle West bench that would be frontline first team players all day, every day in other clubs. That'll give you an idea of the strength and depth that they have. and they're a very, very, very good football team that are well managed and well coached. And the bookmakers have got it spot on in this one, I think, anyway, by making them favourites. I would be making them firm favourites. At this remove, unless something dramatic happens, I cannot see him but being right there at the very end, and like they're through to the league final now, and it's all working out lovely for them,
Yeah,
for the simple
it is.
reason now that they have that game with St. Kieran's to play, which will just gee them up nicely before they go in to play Monaleen. And they had the game with Monaleen in the semi-finals. It's all working very well for Jimmy Lee and the boys,
Yeah, it is. I suppose that's the 12 teams we have. We might go into predictions now, Matt. We'll look at each first round game, and then after predictions, we're going to look, I suppose, at the championship in a whole. We'll pick our 3 teams coming out of each group, our top of the table, our semi-finals, and we'll pick our finalists. But for now, the first round predictions, and we'll start in Group 1. Clahan are playing Galway. I suppose pick your winner and the points. We're back for New Year for anyone that missed the start.
I fancy that Clahan might win that one narrowly.
How
by
narrow?
2 points.
2
points.
I'm going to go against you. I'm going to go for Galway by the same margin. And again, look, for predictions, we're not here to cause any riots or anything like that. We're just giving our honest assessments. For a game like that, I'm sure we don't mind who wins. The Ballylanders will be the only game with conflicting interests, but we're just trying to give our opinions. I'm not trying to talk down Clahan, and you're doing the same for.
No, and I'm not doing the same. And the people that will come up to you and say, dear, you got that all wrong, and you predicted against us. We don't kick any football. We don't poke any sliotar, Jack. Yeah, we're only giving our honest opinion. That's all,
And look, we're against this is only for our fun. And I think some people like hearing what people have predictions, and I'm sure some would love to see their team be backed against and more ammo and all that. But it's only for a bit of fun. But you're saying Clahan, I'm saying Galway. Father Casey's versus Ula. I'll start here. I think Casey's will win. I think they'll probably win by maybe 3. I go 3 points. Casey's.
I had something similar in mind, but I'll have to go Casey's 4 points now if you're going 3.
Yeah, well, to be honest, if I was going for 3, I would go northwards towards 4 as well. But look, again, we're not saying Ula aren't going to win. We've often been left with egg in our face when it comes to these predictions. And then obviously the standout tie, Newcastle West versus Monaleen.
Champions by 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against you here now. I'm gonna go for Monaleen to start the championship strong. I think Newcastle are another team that are dealing with a very strong hurling team, and they'll be contenders in the Premier Intermediate Championship. And I think they might struggle at the start when they've so many, like as you said, they're gonna have 10 tough games come through. And I think Monaleen might take advantage of that, even though they're Premier Intermediate themselves.
They have 10 tough games as well, Jack.
Yeah, I'll put the caveat that Monaleen and Newcastle will split it. So whoever wins in the football will lose in the hurling, I think, when it comes to them games. But I'm going to go for Monaleen to get a first round win, and I'm going to say by a point to reverse the 1 point loss suffered against Newcastle last year. So last year we actually had a lot of the same predictions, but for Group 1 there at the start of the year we both back Father Casey's. That was it. Going on into Group 2 then, we'll start with St. Kieran's versus Kildare Palace Kenry.
I'm going for Kieran's. I think it's going to be a tough opener for Kildare Palace Kenry, but it's going to be very, very tight. I go for Kieran's maybe by 3 points.
Yeah, I'll go for 4 points for Kieran's. It's not anything to do with Kildare Palace Kenry. I just think Kieran's will be looking to make up for last time with the last 2 years, and they're obviously a very strong team, and it does take time to get into the senior ranks, but 3 or 4 points against St. Kieran's, the last in your first game in senior after 80 or so years, is nothing to be laughed at. Like, in fairness, it's a good result, and who's to rule out? Kildare Palace Kenry, the one with conflicting interests, Palestine versus Reddit.
they confounded me every time last year. Now, in fairness to you, you stuck with them and you got a lot of points in the prediction league with them.
Yeah, I did. I stuck to my guns. In fairness,
you stuck to your guns. In fairness,
but
So
I'm going, and I backed against St. Kieran's a lot last year. In fairness, but
Mm.
I'm going to go with Kieran's this time around. The battle of the bellies, the battle between ourselves, Palestine versus Ballylanders. I think everyone knows where we're going with this one, but I suppose
will you be
why?
in goal, Jack?
No,
Will
I
you be in
won't.
goal?
I won't. So it'll be a lot harder for Ballylanders if that might change your mind. It might swing you towards Palestine if I'm not in goals. But so what's your
No,
case for
no,
Ballylanders?
the other way around, actually, Jack.
You must.
I'm going for Bally by 2 points. Ballylanders.
Yeah, why there? I suppose just so they're not saying you're only picking blindly with your own team.
No, like it's in the context of the group, Jack. And you mentioned it there earlier about the how a team performs on the first day out is going to be crucially important. I let's call a spade a spade. Ballysteen and Ballylanders are raging favourites to come out of the group, either of them.
No.
But a win is going to be of huge importance, and I think that there will be an EFI factor that would possibly drive Ballylanders on to win it by about 2 points.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my own club. I'm going to stick with Ballysteen. And to be fair, these haven't been close games really. I know 2018, I think it was Jimmy Barry's goal was a difference of goal, but 19 Ballysteen won by 10, 12 points in the semi-final. 2 years ago, Ballylanders won by 6, but they are due a close game on the scoreboard. I'll tip Ballysteen 2 points. I think it'll be low scoring. I think it'll be tentative a game, as you said. It could define the season for either side because you are in the driving seat. Adair, the standout team in that group, but you'd fancy yourself against everyone else, So I think whoever comes out of that will be the big victor, and we'll go for our own by 2. And then Adair versus Geltie Gales.
This is a very, very difficult one, Jack, because you wonder about Adair. As I said, there has been changes behind the scenes there. What difference, what impact will it make? I'm not so sure. I'm going for Adair slightly to win this one by 3 points.
Yeah,
I think Maurice O'Sullivan being absent is a huge loss to Geltie Gales, and that to a certain degree is conditioning my thinking.
That's fair.
I may be wrong, but I'm going for Adair by 3, Jack.
Yeah, I'd be leaning towards Adair as well. Experienced. They had that big win over, I think it was 18 points to 9 last year, and they met in the semi-finals. Maurice Sullivan be a huge loss again. I know Adair have a couple of injuries that they're dealing with as well. But any day you have the 2 Burke brothers in one forward line in a club championship game, it's hard to bet.
They are formidable, and there are a lot of very good footballers around the pitch. Like you've the Lyonses and the Conleys, and Jack English on his day, he can be an outstanding footballer.
And look, to be fair to Adair, they've always lived up to the hype around them. It's rare enough that they let you down, and they have an impeccable group stage record, as we pointed out many times before. So I think we're both settled there with our predictions for the first round. But watch us have egg in our face when we come back for the second round. But we will come back. We've always come back, even if we got them spectacularly wrong.
When it comes to that, Jack, we have necks like giraffes.
Yeah, in fairness. And we're always back for our own, nearly, within reason. Coming away from the prediction, so, Matt, I'll just throw the teams out there again for you. If your top 3 will say, so again, we're back to the format where, top team is into the semi-final and next 2 are into the quarters. And we'll avoid relegation because, look, you don't want to see anyone relegated, just the way it is. But
we don't.
Top team?
In Group 1, Newcastle West.
And followed by
Mona Leon.
And
I think Father Cases.
Yeah, I suppose with my prediction for Monaleen in the first round, I would probably go for Monaleen to finish top of the group. Is it fair to say who wins that first game you'd fancy to top the group?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of football, Jack. We're talking now about 5 games as distinct from 2.
Yeah, but that's what we would imagine would be the case. Do you think that if Newcastle lose the first round, that Monaleen will top the group?
Possibly, but I'd still stick with Newcastle.
Yeah, I think Monaleen will top the group. We'll go on to what happens after that. I think Newcastle will be the second team. I think Newcastle and Monaleen are going to be the top 2. I don't think there's any doubt in that. Like, I will side with you with regards Father Casey's, but like there is no one you can rule out like in this championship, and it's improving so many times. Like when you look at it, Kilharn Casey's, Sorula, Monaleen were semi-finalists. Newcastle won it. Like they all reached the knockout stages. They'll all have the same ambitions again this year. I'll go Casey's as well. But I wouldn't, you couldn't count out any other teams. In Group 2, then, we spoke in depth about Adair. I think Adair top the group anyway. Would you agree with that?
I agree with you here, Jack, yeah.
And then it gets tricky after that.
It does.
If you were to call the two...
I would go with St. Kieran's to finish second, possibly, if they get a good start against Kildare Palace Kenry. Because they're that type of team that usually, more so than most teams, their first day out is defines their campaign. And I think if they get to a winning start, they're quite capable of building some momentum on it. Now, I would fancy St. Kieran's possibly to finish second.
Yeah, I suppose for second in Group 2. And like you're preempting things here. You're likely to avoid the big 2 in the other group. No, that's not to say Father Casey's or Clahan, Calbally or Ula won't finish, third or won't finish second, or that they'll make Monaleen or Newcastle finish third. But these things do come into play. I would agree that Kieran's would be in the top 3. I wouldn't be surprised if Kieran's top the group. To be honest with you, if Kieran's and Adair, I'm just checking now what round do they meet in, because if Adair or if Kieran's are coming into a game with a chance to go top of the group, I wouldn't be surprised. They're actually not meeting till the final round, so it's likely that one of them will have lost points by then. But I will agree.
That could be like Ula and Newcastle West in the final round in 2019. Botham went in unbeaten with full points over Martinstown. Ula won it by a point, and of course Newcastle West reversed it around in the county final.
Yeah, they gained their revenge. And the third team to join them, I think we know where we're going with these.
Yeah, it's not that easy now, Jack.
No, it didn't.
Loyalty, I suppose. I'd be reluctantly, I find it.
Like looking at the teams now, Ballysteen were in the quarterfinal last year, semi-final the year before. Ballanders were in the final in 2020. Geltie Gales were in the semi-final last year, and obviously Kildare Palace won the intermediate championship. Again, it's a toss of coin.
I'm going to go to Gales.
Oh, I'm going to side for Ballysteen. I think if the forward unit can get going in Ballysteen, I think they're well capable of putting up a big score. Some nice forwards inside there, and I couldn't back against my own. But I do feel like the lads will get the job done. I think for Ballysteen, the lads have always shown that when championship comes, they've always delivered in that regard. But yeah, Geltie Gales obviously beat Ballysteen last year. As in goals, I saw firsthand just how good they are and just how good Robbie Childs is in the forward line. And I suppose I was disappointed.
I qualify it all by saying I hope I'm wrong. Not wrong about the Gales, but I hope I'm wrong there by excluding Ballylanders.
Yeah, you wouldn't mind where you see Ballylanders come in there, but yeah, that's the 6 we've chosen each. I tend not to look back on these prediction videos at the start of the year, Matt, because I'm always woefully wrong. So, we'll say, regardless of the parents, who would be your final 4, your finalists, your winners for this year's championship? Or would I
I
just
think
say
it
you're
could be
fighting?
it could be Newcastle West Monaleen final.
Yeah, do you know what? I think, I don't know if it even works out with my predictions. I think Newcastle will be caught along the way somewhere. Now, that could be the first round game against Monaleen, which I backed against them. I think we could see a Mon. I think we're both agreeing. I think we'd see Monaleen in the final, and I think it'll be against Adair.
Against Adair.
And I think Adair will win the championship this year. Now, I've nailed. I hope I'm wrong, as you often qualify with, but I think Adair have always bounced back. You know,
Yeah.
lost in 19 to
I,
Newcastle, bounced back against them last year, their following year. You know, and they'll be disappointed
I'm
that they were.
I'm going for Newcastle West to do what I don't think they ever did, put back-to-back titles.
Yeah, look, Limerick. It took Limerick
You
100 and
know,
something years.
there's so many good players. There's so many good players. When you look at the like of Keane Sheehan, Ian Corbett, and Dermot Kelly on the county senior football team, you know, and look at all the players around it. Um, you know, I find it very, very hard to go against them.
Yeah, I think it's hard to go against them, but I just think I think they will be caught along the way. I think it will come, not it will come down to, but they'll have a hard road to get there with the hurlers. So will Monaleen, and I think Adair don't have that crossover that the other teams have. Now, I'd love to see Palestine get back there to the final for the first time since '64, but with all that hope, and for your sake, wouldn't it be great to see Palestine by Landers final?
I remember that team in '64. It was dotted with county players who subsequently featured with Limerick in 1965. The following year, it was the first year that Limerick were back in the Senior Football Championship after about 30 years, and they beat Cork in the first round in Killarney, and in the semi-final of the Munster Championship. That's how they announced their return. And there was fellas like Bob Walsh Bob Walsh wasn't in goals, but he was in goals for Ballysteen that year that they won it. But Tom Carrick was on it, and Basil Fitzgibbon was on that team, and there are a couple that come to mind straight away. Did Pat Reedy play with Ballysteen at that stage?
I knew him all at one stage, but
and of course, the captain was from Ballysteen, Tony Fitzgerald, centre halfback.
yeah, I suppose for the parish, we won 3 in a row when you consider that Ballysteen won in '64 and Skeeton won in '65 and '66, and Skeeton also won in '72. You know, so there was a lot of winning around the club at the time. Obviously, there were separate teams, but it's one now, thankfully.
Yeah, but they made their contribution. Ballysteen, in fairness, did make their contribution to Limerick in that year, and they led Kerry in the Munster final 2-5 to 5 points at halftime, and got beaten by 2-16 to 2-7. That's off the top of my head, Jack.
We were talking about it recently.
Pardon?
But I suppose we were talking about it recently, you know, and we were building up to this year's Munster final. But I suppose a big thing for this championship is, you know, you can look forward to it now. The footballers are out, unfortunately, but it's been a really positive year on an inter-county level, that if you can bring that into the club scene, you know, you could have the makings of an excellent club championship.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It augurs well for a Jack. But wouldn't I love if we had the James Nolan Cup to go with the Lee McCarthy? They would look absolutely beautiful, you know, together. Yeah. I think they would have made a lovely pair. But sure, look, it wasn't to be anyway, you know. But by God, we came damn close to it, you know.
Yeah, but you know, it's when we're calling the games there, you know, there's going to be probably no game. There's obviously going to be some games where team wins well, but there's no game, you know, a dead rubber, a whitewash to one team, you know. So look, it's a very exciting championship. It's down to start the weekend of, let's say, Friday the 1st of July to that Sunday. There could be games on the Thursday. We're recording now on the 13th of June because I'm away soon, so we'll know more by the time this comes out. The fixtures probably be set, but that's all we know for now. We're closing in on an hour, Matt. I think that's plenty. We've made our predictions. We've looked through all the teams. In fairness, we've given them the time. We give our first round predictions as well. Hopefully I can start off strong when it comes to that, and hopefully we'll get the victories that we want in the first round, which pertains to one game. And after that, the green and gold mist that we both have for different teams, we can put to the side afterwards. But It's just nice. That's the first
Jack,
game and it's out.
I hope when you come back from the States that you will be lagging behind in the predictions table.
Well, I'll be home. I'll be home in time for that clash. Yeah, I assume it's going to be on in Kilmallock, but I'll be jet lagged. But I'd sleep soundly if I was ahead of you in the prediction tables. I'd be regaining my sleep very quickly. But that's for another day. The best of luck to all the teams, all the management, referees, of course, that they couldn't have put out, and all the lads making the fixtures, because there's a lot of games this year, and it looks seamless. I just have the Excel sheet open in a background tab. It looks seamless, very professionally done. So best luck to all the teams, to all the players, as I said, and a huge thank you to you again, Matt. We're looking forward to a very exciting championship, and we'll have 2 rounds of the football, and then there'll be turn of the hurling, but the hurling will wait its due course. So for us, that's all for this evening. Wherever you're listening or watching, have a good evening, and hopefully your team does well. So thank you, Matt.
And you have a great trip stateside, Jack, and enjoy.